Cry was the ugliest and weakest hunter known to man. However, everything changes when he accidentally becomes the leader of the strongest hunter party, so he starts raising up baddies to fight his battles for him. The story opens up in a world where treasure hunters invade treasure vaults and battle deadly phantoms in hopes of securing hidden relics. Since childhood, Cry and his friends shared the dream of becoming the best treasure hunters in the world. To make this dream a reality, they formed a party named Grievers, moved to the capital city, and started training in the treasure vaults suited for beginners. But it didn't take Cry long to notice the difference in strength between him and his friends as compared to them. He was no more threatening than a house cat. This forced Cry to make the tough decision of leaving the party. But instead of letting him walk away, they made Cry the leader instead. Today, Cry still serves as the leader of the strongest treasure hunting party in existence, and currently, he's on his way to the recruitment drive held by the 3 strongest parties in the country. Upon arriving at the venue, Cry waits in line when he gets approached by a level 3 hunter named Ruta, who says it's her first time at a recruitment drive, so Cry makes sure to hide his identity. Once inside, Cry tells her that most of the hunters are hoping to get recruited by the Brave party, which is for elite hunters. Joining their party guarantees a hunter's success, but they're quite picky and have never accepted new members through events like this. Suddenly, the recruitment drive is interrupted when 2 hunters start arguing over which of them deserves to get the spot, but their argument quickly turns into a duel, which prompts Cry to leave before things get ugly. However, the hunters end up dodging each other's attacks, and one of them nearly takes Cry's life before recognizing who he is. Suddenly, the leader of Brave, shows up and reveals that Cry is the leader of all the parties, and they can't get started without him, which shocks everyone who thought he was just an ugly bum like you. With no way out, Cry is forced to sit among the recruiters, where praises him for going incognito to observe the applicants. But little does he know that the only reason Cry was hiding his identity was because he had shown up late. Before long, this whole recruitment drive starts boring Cry, and to spice things up, he requests to let him recruit 1 new member for his party. Once agrees, Cry decides to raise the stakes and promises to recommend whoever brings his relic back to He then throws the relic, and every hunter rushes to get a hold of it, which throws the event into chaos. Using this as an opportunity, Cry escapes from the venue and heads to the party house. Later that day, Cry's assistant comes to his room and informs him that the recruitment drive ended with the venue getting blown up, and because of that, the Hunters Association wishes to have a word with him. With no room to argue, Cry is forced to head to the Hunters Association's office and bow before the association head, Gark, insisting that everything that happened was all a huge misunderstanding. However, Gark refuses to let him off the hook and assigns him a job as a punishment. Having no other choice, Cry goes through the job request list and selects the easiest treasure vault mission available. With that settled, Cry heads out and runs into a hunter from the recruitment drive, Tino, who informs him that she managed to secure the relic he threw during the recruitment drive. This gives him the idea of dumping all his work onto her. The moment she realizes what he's planning, Tino tries to escape, but he uses one of his relics to stop her and forces her to complete the mission in his place. The next day, Cry meets up with a bunch of rookies from the recruitment drive, Gilbert and Greg. Then he introduces himself as the legendary hunter known as 1000 Tricks. They all get surprised that he's a level 8 hunter, so Tino uses this chance to order the hunters to get on their knees, but Cry tells her not to be so threatening. However, Gilbert refuses to believe that he's the strongest adventurer, causing Tino to pity him for not recognizing her master's strength. She refuses to work with him, but at the same time, Cry fails to argue because there's no way someone like him could be the strongest anyway. Nonetheless, he invites them to participate with Tino in her job. But Gilbert still refuses to listen to him, and says that he will never accept that Cry is the leader of the strongest party. Ultimately, Cry decides to respect Gilbert's decision, and asks Greg and Ruta to help them instead. Additionally, he asks Tino to find someone from the clan as Gilbert's replacement. And just as they are about to leave, Gilbert challenges Cry to a duel and promises to join them if he loses. But instead of accepting the challenge himself, he asks Gilbert to fight Tino, who is more than ready to punish a cocky, pretty boy like him. Before starting, Tino boasts about her insane flexibility, while Gilbert decides to put her down and admits that he was careless before. Tino replies by saying that there's no way she will be losing this fight and chooses to hold back so she doesn't annihilate him. Cry, who is spectating, believes that although Tino is better than Gilbert thanks to her experience, Gilbert's sword can be troublesome. But when Gilbert decides not to use his sword when fighting an unarmed maiden, Cry realizes that it's more than over for him. Once the battle starts, Tino makes the first move, and while Gilbert dodges her punch, he fails to notice the kick and goes crashing into the nearby wall. Thinking she won, Tino begins to celebrate until Gilbert somehow manages to get back up, only to be put in a headlock by Tino, who continues to tighten her grip, all while she advises him never to disrespect her master again. Ultimately, she hits him from the back and knocks him out, emerging as the victor. As Gilbert lies on the ground, he remembers his childhood days when he took up the sword and quickly surpassed even the adults. To make his dream a reality, he came to the capital and joined a party, thinking he was the strongest until now. Surprisingly, Tino decides to give him another chance to redeem himself by using his weapon. But when he disagrees, Tino calls it worthless pride, saying that it means nothing if he dies. This makes Gilbert realize that she's right, as if this was a real fight, he would have died on the spot. Judging by his reaction, Cry thinks that he must have left his party due to the power gap and mentions that it was the same case in his party, but in his case, no one was abandoned. And realizing that Cry figured it out without knowing anything in advance, Gilbert is forced to admit that he really is the guy called Thousand Tricks. Following that, Cry notices his sword and, with a single kick, activates its full power, which comes as a shock to Gilbert, as even he hasn't achieved to withdraw this much power. After that, Cry explains that mana material is the core substance of the world. Similarly, treasure vaults is a phenomenon where ley lines and other forces condense mana material, manifesting alternate worlds based on memories from the core of the world. The site of his job was originally ruled by wolf monsters called Silver Moons, but they were eradicated thanks to hunting of their fur. This resulted in the formation of a treasure vault and a blood-soaked wolf phantom. Later on, while conversing with Eva, he reassures her that the vault is only level 3, and since he's sending 4 adventurers, they'll be fine on their own. Cry thanks Eva for giving him information about Gilbert, as it shocked him seeing Cry guess everything about his life correctly. After that, Cry starts cleaning his relics, saying that they are awesome for letting him perform miracles, and begins bragging about his huge collection of relics. This prompts Eva to advise Cry that even though he receives an income from grievers, he should not spend so much on the relics. Apparently, the income from grievers is split evenly amongst the members, regardless of contribution, and although Cry does nothing, he still gets a load of money. Luckily, this reminds him that some of them are drained down, and he pays a visit to his friends to get the relics charged. There, one of them informs Cry about how a wayward phantom appeared on a road up north and destroyed an entire caravan. According to witnesses, it was similar to a wolf and came from the White Wolf's Den, the place where Tino's party went. At first, Cry figures that they'll be alright as Tino is strong and has 3 other formidable teammates, so he dismisses them as speculation. But after hearing his friends mention another party of level 5 hunters who went missing nearby, he checks the job request and realizes it's for their rescue. Judging by his expressions, his friends question if something is wrong, and when Cry mentions that he sent Tino off to the White Wolf's Den, they freak out, as they realize that he sent Tino, a level 4, into a vault where level 5 party went missing. With that being said, Cry decides to leave, and just when he tries his best not to panic, he remembers that he completely drained Gilbert's sword, which Gilbert probably didn't charge. Elsewhere, Tino tells her party that she wrote a will beforehand because she knew this isn't going to be an easy mission. When they start looking concerned, she further mentions that the party's composition isn't random, as it's all according to Cry's plan. Gilbert remembers that Cry already knew about the reason he quit his party, and Greg agrees with him, saying that the incident at the recruitment drive was also all calculated. Lastly, Tino reassures them that it will be alright since it's all according to Cry's calculations. After walking a little further, they eventually come across that phantom that is very much capable of wiping them out. On the other hand, Cry is losing it after finding out about the dangers involved. He has no choice but to go on his own, as no one will be willing to go as a backup at this time of day. His plan is to stop them from reaching the treasure vault, and calling this job a mistake so Ark or somebody else can clear it later. To prepare, he enters the relic storeroom and gathers as many as he can. On his way out, Cry runs into Eva, who is glad to see him worry about them. Just then, she notices him carrying Citri's slime, but he makes an excuse, saying that he won't possess something that violates the law. With that being said, he puts on his Batman costume from Temu and flies off, worrying Eva as that relic seems to have no safety features or brakes. Meanwhile, Tino's party manages to beat that phantom using the power of friendship, and when Greg asks the reason Gilbert didn't use his sword, he mentions that he doesn't know how to charge it. Hearing this, Ruta suggests retreating, but Tino refuses, saying that they will be sticking to the plan. She believes that those hunters are still alive, and that Gilbert's sword's depleting must also be a part of Cry's plan. Soon after, they run into a horde of those phantoms, and judging by their size, Tino figures that the White Wolf's Den was created to suit the size of normal wolf monsters who live there, and since these phantoms are so large, they probably can't move freely inside the den. To start things off, Gilbert decides to make the first move and get rid of their bows and guns, but gets mocked by Tino for being reckless, as she mentions that returning with every member alive is also a part of her duty. Her plan involves attracting the attention of those phantoms with Rude, giving Greg and Gilbert the chance to attack them from behind. Using this strategy, they manage to defeat the phantom by overwhelming it with their teamwork, and it turns out to be such an easy task because the enemies don't have any concept of cooperation. Soon after, more of those phantoms appear, and watching others fight, Tino is reassured that their party is not half bad. Although Gilbert is a loudmouth, he is quite strong. Greg is also good at teamwork thanks to his experience, while Ruda, being a thief, locates the enemies with no difficulty. As she's busy contemplating her master's perfect plan, Gilbert remembers the time he mocked his party for not having enough guts and left them due to the power gap. But now, he understands that they were desperate as well and regrets not taking their feelings into consideration. But after fighting side by side with his party, he has realized how good it feels to have someone to rely on. Finally, they are done clearing up the area, and not so long after, Tino hears someone approaching and figures that it could be the boss monster. According to her, they should be able to handle the boss, considering how easily they defeated the phantoms. Noticing that Greg looks uneasy, Tino tells him that he shouldn't be so cautious, as safe missions don't make people grow. Despite agreeing with Tino, Greg lets everyone know that he was able to earn a good amount of money after reaching level 4, and because of that, he never fought an enemy that seemed hard to beat, and this mindset was probably influenced by seeing many of his friends die. However, Tino believes that Greg approached the recruitment drive particularly to change this habit and is sure that Cry placed him in this party for that exact reason. Furthermore, it's not only Greg, as according to Tino, everyone was placed in this party thanks to Cry's elaborate calculations. Confused, Ruda inquires about the reason she was chosen, and after thinking hard about it, Tino figures that it could be because of her impressive dimensions. Ultimately, they come across the boss that is twice the size of phantoms, and seeing that it's not wearing a helmet, Tino realizes that it must be its weak spot. She asks the boys to hold their strike, so she can make a move on it. With that being said, Gilbert blocks the initial attack, and when Greg tries to cut the boss down, he fails and gets his sword broken in half. Luckily, Tino uses this chance to her advantage and stabs the boss's neck, eventually ending it for good. However, she gets hurt in the process and uses a potion to heal herself halfway. Thinking that their job is done, everyone calms down, and Tino gives Greg a spare sword to use for the time being. But to their shock, more of those boss monsters show up, and the only escape route they had gets blocked by one of them. Having no other choice, Greg decides to hold the fort with Gilbert and asks the girls to escape, but Tino refuses, saying that she will not be sacrificing anyone. With that being said, they try to overwhelm one of the bosses using their number advantage, and during the battle, Tino remembers one of the tricks Cry taught her and aims for the boss's eyes. Seeing her succeed, Gilbert rushes the monster, only to get struck by the panicked boss. Just when they think that it's all over, Cry comes crashing into one of those monsters, and witnessing this, the other boss monsters start to back off. However, when the boss he struck tries counterattacking, its strike gets blocked by one of Cry's relics, leaving the monster shocked. Following that, he uses another one of his relics and blasts off the boss monster, but it only did minimal damage since that relic is quite flashy but weak. Realizing that he might end up embarrassing himself, Cry is forced to use the forbidden relic, and the monsters, not knowing what it is, start to panic as well. With no hesitation, he throws that relic towards them and shoots it with a lightning bolt, creating a smoke screen. Seizing this chance, Cry suggests running away, and everyone assumes that Cry is setting a slower pace because of Tino's injury, totally unaware that this is actually his full speed. Cry's unintended kindness reminds Tino of the time when she was being sold to slave traders, but was saved by Cry's party, which ultimately made her want to join them. After reaching a safe spot, Tino looks worried after screwing up her job, but Cry reassures her that he can tell how well she did, judging by her condition. Furthermore, he heals her wounds using one of his relics and explains that running away was the best option. Now with everyone relying on Cry, he continues walking forward, having no clue of what to do or where the exit is. Before long, Cry comes to realize that everything looks the exact same, so one can never know where they currently are. Later on, Gilbert ends up asking where they are headed, and while Cry stays silent, Tino lets him know that they are headed away from the exit. She saw the map before and has a rough idea of this den's layout. That's why she is sure their current path will never get them out. However, she's not worried, as it must be part of Cry's plan. Eventually, Ruda also speaks up, wanting to be at least told where they are headed, not knowing that their guide is as clueless as her. After following Cry clueless for a while, they coincidentally bump into the hunters they were supposed to rescue. Their leader introduces himself as Rudolph, and when he tries thanking Tino, she asks him to thank Cry instead, unaware that he found them by chance as well. Nonetheless, Ruta treats them using potions and tells Cry that they need something to eat, as their energy is completely depleted. To take care of this situation, Cry gives everyone a bunch of chocolates from his goodie bag. Meanwhile, Gilbert mentions that although the phantoms were strong, a party of level 5 hunters should have easily taken care of them. Upon hearing this, the level 5 hunter says that the phantom they fought came alone and had its face covered by a skull. He believes that this phantom is the manifestation of the curse that was formed from the hatred of people who lost their lives to the weaker wolves. Being level 5 hunters, they were confident in their abilities, but against the skull phantom, they got folded like laundry. Judging by how it was fighting, they believe that it could be on par with the hunter called Thousand Swords. Turns out Cry knows Thousand Swords pretty well because he is none other than a member of the Grievers and his childhood friend, Luke. After learning about the skull dude, Ruta asks Cry what they should do, and he gives the most predictable answer, advising everyone to leave before they run into that thing again. But since the leader of the party is Tino, he decides to dump all the responsibility onto her, calling it a good experience when in reality, he's too scared to lead everyone on his own. Nevertheless, everyone then begins heading towards the exit, and along the way, the 5-level hunter asks Tino to use him as a shield if that phantom appears, requesting to at least get his companions to safety. But she refuses to use him as a sacrifice, saying that they will be fine as long as Cry is here. However, Cry doesn't share the idea, as if he were alone, he'd already be gone, but with everyone present, that's not possible. Just then, they start hearing the howls of those phantoms and realizing that he only has 5 safety relics, Cry begins to panic as well. He got no other relics as the shooting ring is not strong enough, the slime is currently missing, and he dropped his sword relic somewhere. As a last resort, he makes up his mind to launch himself towards the phantom like a human missile. Soon after, that skull dude makes its appearance, and its aura causes everyone to tremble in fear. But to everyone's shock, one of the Grievers members, Liz, appears as well, and with a single kick, she sends the skull phantom crashing into the wall. Afterward, she returns Cry the sword relic he had dropped, and after realizing that the others don't know who she is, Liz gets mad and questions how they can call themselves hunters in the first place. Afterward, she tells Cry about how sad she was to find out that he went to the treasure vault by himself, but the thing that disappoints her the most is her disciple, Tino, struggling against such weak phantoms. When Gilbert tries to intervene, he gets thrown into a wall, and after that, Liz continues scolding Tino, asking if she's incompetent or is lacking ambition. She then calls Tino a pile of trash and blames her for ruining her reputation. Ultimately, Cry is forced to intervene and take Tino's side, telling Liz that she did a good job. He praises Liz for learning how to hold back, which ends up improving her mood. While they are busy conversing, a boss monster shows up with a machine gun. Witnessing this, Liz prepares to fight and puts on her mask, and just as the boss begins firing, she starts moving like the hero from corny action movies. Thanks to that, she easily catches each and every bullet with her hand, surprising everyone present. Liz gets pissed at the phantom for thinking it can hit her in the first place, and after giving Tino another quick scolding session, Liz jumps in the air and defeats the boss phantom in one move. Following that, the skull phantom makes its move, but Liz grabs its sword mid-strike and kicks it in the guts. She then lands a brutal punch and ultimately finishes it off without breaking a sweat. Witnessing her power, Cry can't believe they thought the skull phantom was on par with Thousand Swords, and remembers how both Luke and Liz improved their strength by battling each other. The next day, Gilbert decides to gift his sword to Cry as he wishes to start all over again with his old party. He also plans on leveling up and reaching Liz's skill level, but none of the three are convinced. Last year, the smile was given to Cry by a member of Grievers named Citri, who is a renowned alchemist and the brains behind Grievers. But when he tried to open the little capsule, Citri advised him not to, as it was powerful enough to destroy an entire city. Now, in the present time, Cry is going insane trying to find out where the capsule went. After gathering his thoughts, he remembers that when he opened it in the den, the capsule was empty. And even before that, the slime capsule always remained in the storage room. This helps Cry convince himself that it must have been empty all this time. After that, he leaves his room and runs into Eva, who mentions that the association wants to hear a report on the White Wolf's den. Cry tells her to ask Tino since she was the party leader, and asks if there's something new happening at the capital city. Hearing this, Eva gets a bit suspicious and figures that he's hiding something. But before she goes full Karen mode, Cry manages to evade her and leave. He then goes to the training hall, where he runs into Sven, the leader of the Obsidian Cross. Sven asks Cry to stop Liz from training Tino any further, or she might die for real this time. Thinking that he's exaggerating, Cry opens the door and finds Tino lying on the ground. Liz, who is present there, doesn't plan on stopping despite Tino's condition, and almost kicks her out of existence until Cry intervenes, telling her to stop. He asks her to call it a day, considering Tino's critical state, and luckily, she agrees. However, Tino unexpectedly grabs Liz's leg, and after telling her that she can still fight, Tino stands back up. At this point, Cry gives up and meets Sven outside, who informs him that the northern route has been locked down. He further elaborates by saying that multiple phantoms have appeared to even crush the party from the Knight's Order. Upon hearing this, Cry figures that the annoying shiny head must have wanted to discuss this, and he curses Ark for not being here at such an important time. Just then, he gets the idea of sending Sven to talk to the association instead, and after dumping his duty on him, he flees. Once he's gone, Sven's party member questions the reason a leader like Cry stays back while everyone else completes missions. Sven, who has known Cry for a while, says that he's the one who keeps the grievers going and is no less than a monster himself. Elsewhere, Gark wonders about the reason behind the anomalies at the White Wolf's den and decides to talk to Cry about it. For someone like Cry, who hadn't set foot in the den before, to visit it so suddenly only gives Gark more reason to believe that something is going on. Meanwhile, in some place around the White Wolf's den, a secret organization discusses the involvement of Cry in revealing their secret plan. The person behind this illegal activity is the capital's head of research, who is messing with the ley lines and storing them at his base, which, as a result, is causing the anomalies. If his research works, they would be able to create treasure vaults at will. When the mages start to question where Sophia is at such an important time, the leader reassures them that she is already on the way and once she returns, she'd surely resolve this problem for them. On the other hand, Cry dreams of the smile destroying the city and wakes up in a panic, only to find Liz sleeping next to him. That morning, Gark shows up to meet with Cry but gets told by Liz to leave since Cry's busy. Furthermore, she mocks him for always relying on Cry to do their work, and Liz ultimately lands a kick on Gark, which he easily blocks. This transitions into a fight between them, and while that happens, Cry invites Gark's assistant, Kaina, to have some tea. She informs him that there is nothing particularly wrong with the ley lines and asks about his opinion. However, Cry takes the smart route and stays quiet about the dangerous slime he has lost. Instead, he offers his clan's help to solve this matter regarding anomalies. And just like before, he dumps this work on Ark's shoulders as well. In the meantime, the battle between Liz and Gark continues, and after listening to her mockery for some time, Gark eventually loses his cool and goes beast mode. Witnessing this, Cry thinks that while Gark is currently the head of the association, he used to be a level 7 hunter, hence the reason behind his power. Before things get out of hand, Cry stops them, saying that they are done with the discussion. Hearing this, Liz clings to him while Kaina also suggests going home. Later that day, Cry and Liz go out shopping and discuss the fact that Gark the geezer might be nearing his retirement date. Liz further says that Gark might not be able to handle the phantoms at the Night Palace if he stays like that. Curious, Cry asks if they are stronger than the skull dude from the den, but Liz can't seem to remember, as she pays no attention to weaklings like that one. This reminds Cry that Citri and the others are still at the Night Palace, and he decides to take care of the slime problem before it becomes a problem for them. Out of nowhere, Liz hands him her bag and pins down a random dude present nearby. When asked the reason, she mentions that he had been staring at them for some time. Cry asks her to let him go and apologizes to the guy before he runs off. After going into hiding, he wonders how this happened when he was tailing them from afar and can't understand the reason Cry allowed him to get away. As their date continues, the two of them end up wandering to the most dangerous place in the capital. When Liz asks if he's looking for something, Cry agrees and thinks about the people who have gone missing nearby, making him believe it could be Slime's doing. Additionally, he is aware of an ice cream shop nearby and decides to check it out with Liz. Little does he know that the guy who was following them is present at the ice cream shop, as it's one of their secret research bases. Eventually, the two of them went to the ice cream shop and tried getting in even though it was closed, but when no one responded, they were forced to give up. After returning home, Cry regrets not being able to find the slime and asks Liz about when Citri will be returning. At first, Liz offers to assist him, but after finding out that he needs help with magical creatures, she backs off, saying that it might take Citri some time to return. Just then, Eva shows up and informs Cry that they have selected members to join the White Wolf Den's investigation. Since Ark is absent, the Obsidian Cross team will be taking part, and the investigation will begin tomorrow. Luckily, Cry is relaxed because he won't be joining them and gives his approval. Meanwhile, the leader of the secret organization is informed that their ice cream shop was exposed, and not knowing the reason, thousands of trails deliberately overlooked it, which has them confused. Upon hearing this, one of their members, Sophia, suggests fighting them head-on. She believes that this is the perfect chance to test the defense system she built and wipe the enemies out so that no information about them is spread. The leader agrees, saying that since Cry has noticed them, there's no way their plan can move further without any casualties. Elsewhere, Tino takes her time scrubbing the humiliation off her body after getting skill issued by Liz. Once she's done, Tino visits the hall and questions the reason so many hunters are gathered. One of the hunters informs her that Cry is sending so many of them to investigate a level 3 treasure vault, which makes him believe that something is wrong. Hearing this makes Tino wonder if the monsters there have evolved since then. Soon after, Cry makes an appearance and gets informed by Eva that Ark won't be able to come, so she gathered these hunters as his replacement. However, the cheapskate realizes that hiring this many people will cost a lot and suggests sending only half of them. Hearing this, all the hunters start panicking, making Cry wonder just what exactly is happening in that level 3 treasure vault. Nonetheless, realizing that everyone is worried by this decision, he confirms that there is enough reward for everyone, and Eva agrees. Furthermore, Cry remembers that the slime hasn't been found yet and thinks that it could be the one causing trouble. Suddenly, Liz shows up, saying that if it were her, she'd go alone. Liz then requests that Cry let her take this request with Tino, but he straight up refuses because he's well aware of the trouble she might cause. This prompts Eva to ask whether he will take command, and with no way to escape the situation, he ends up agreeing on the condition that he will join them later. After the meeting, Liz confronts Cry for not letting her join, and he calms Liz down by giving her another job. Before leaving, one of the hunters asks Cry about the stuff they should look out for, and he tells them to be careful of the slime. Simultaneously, the organization finds out their full-fledged investigation plan, and the leader advises his men to crush the enemies. In reply, one of the men says that the Grievers could be troublesome, but according to Sophia, there are only 3 members of the Grievers present in the capital, while others are out on different missions. She says that Liz can be dealt with by taking measures against her physical attacks, while Cry can't use his full abilities without having someone to guide. Lastly, Citri's alchemy magic techniques can be taken care of by Sophia's defense system. With that being said, she asks for their leader's permission to eradicate them, to which he agrees, ordering his men to follow her command. On the other hand, Sven and the others who are at the White Wolf Den treasure vault don't find anything remarkable. After that, Sven receives a call from someone and heads out to warn the other hunter group, but they end up mocking him for not only finding nothing but telling him to be careful of slimes. Sven replies by saying that he warned them out of compassion, as everyone in his party is also a healer, and silently ignoring casualties goes against their principles. But when that group keeps arguing about the presence of slimes, Sven decides to tell them a story. According to him, they all went to a flower viewing party in the past and were told by Cry to bring their weapons. That place they went to is now a treasure vault called the Prism Garden. This made Sven believe that Cry could see the future, and it was the exact reason he invested in a communication stone to hear Cry's words of wisdom. Meanwhile, Liz keeps on asking Cry the reason they are not heading out, and while he's aware of his promise to show his face before the investigation ends, Liz's presence makes it quite difficult. Just then, Citri pays them a visit after returning from her trip. After that, she warns Cry that their enemies are powerful and must be destroyed before they get stronger. She then tells Cry that the slime is a failed product, but she still made it so the slime won't attack the two of them. Then, Citri contemplates the excuse Cry gave her, and thinks about how the slime not only escaped from the capsule, but also opened the safe to get out. Since there are no vents in the room, the slime must have gone out the drain, at least according to Cry. The next day, Sven meets up with the other hunters who arrive to assist them, and is told that Cry asked them to take command from the Obsidian Cross. Sven then asks him about Liz, and after finding out that Cry stopped her from coming along, he's quite grateful because if she were here, no one would be able to cooperate. Afterward, he tells everyone to gather around and questions if someone has fought a smile before or has brought something useful to fight the slime. While most of them disagree, the few who do bring only useless items like a smile repellent spray. Ultimately, that hunter named Geen intervenes, offering to fight the slime if Sven's scared. Upon hearing this, everyone begins to mock him, and Sven replies by saying that he might become the first victim, and asks him to leave some information so he can be avenged. This prompts Geen to make fun of everyone for listening to a guy who didn't show up, and after he leaves, a red-haired baddie, Talia, says that she is an alchemist who has worked with Citri, and the two of them research slimes together. Thanks to this, they manage to make a potion that can eliminate slimes, but the only downside is that it doesn't work on anything else. With that, the hunters start entering the den and are ordered to whistle if an emergency occurs. Meanwhile, Sophia talks to the organization leader using a communication stone and says that they are against 100 hunters, but they can easily be dealt with using their ultimate weapon. After a whole day of investigation, the hunters find nothing but the usual phantoms. Witnessing their failure, Geen shows up to mock them again and ultimately goes away to take a quick leak. While emptying his little water gun, Geen curses Cry for acting almighty but hiding like a coward back in the capital. Just then, he hears a suspicious sound and decides to investigate. There, he sees a giant phantom chained and two of the men from the organization standing nearby. With no hesitation, he attacks one of them and kicks him away, prompting the mage to launch fireballs at him. After dodging the fireballs, he knocks the mage down and starts beating the first guy. This gives the mage a chance to inject a strange potion into the wolf's body, causing it to get bigger in size and transform into a slime-like creature. At the same time, Sven hears a whistle and orders everyone to rush towards the forest. They begin searching for Geen and eventually come across him, only to hear him admit that Cry was right all along. Before long, the slime makes its way towards the hunters, and without wasting any time, Sven shoots a bow, targeting the slime's legs. While the hunters continue targeting it with long-range attacks, Sven tells his comrade to heal Geen, who informs them of everything he witnessed. Following that, Sven fires a couple of more arrows but deals no damage, and the slime begins targeting the hunters. Seeing this, Sven takes the potion from Talia, and she tells him to put it inside the slime's body, as it will make it self-destruct. With that being said, Sven gains the slime's attention, and it jumps towards him. After calibrating its landing spot, Sven puts the potion there and waits for the slime to land on it. Although his plan works, the potion does little to no damage, causing Sven to mention that it's not a slime after all. However, one of the hunters informs him that, according to Cry, it's supposed to be a slime-like creature, making Sven enraged over Cry's lack of information. Before things get worse, Citri makes an appearance and lets them know that she was ordered by Cry to come. She informs them that a huge amount of magical power swirls around the smile's body, making a force field around the slime that can deflect the attacks. She also believes that one won't find such a strong phantom, even in level 8 treasure vaults. Following that, Citri starts examining that slime-like phantom, and realizes that it is converting the mana material into magical energy. Not only that, but it's also trying to consume her, the person absorbing the most mana material nearby. She eventually comes up with a plan, and as a result, she throws a capsule towards the slime. When Sven shoots it with his arrow, it blows up the slime's head and ultimately puts it down for good. Simultaneously, Gark also shows up in a concerning outfit, and Citri mentions that he's the one who gave her a ride. Once things are settled, Citri informs everyone that the organization responsible is the Akashic Tower, and they are trying to manipulate treasure vaults at will. When an official argues that their leader, Magus, has been banished, Citri mentions that she has been keeping tabs on him and believes that the slime is also his doing. This prompts Talia to ask if they have some sort of device underground, to which Citri agrees, saying that it's the core of their research. For now, she wishes to interrogate the mage captured by Geen, while she cooks a plan to assure their victory. After the meeting ends, Sven tells his comrade that Citri is a powerful weakling, who believes she could get away with anything and uses any means necessary to win. According to him, she's just as much of a monster as the other members. Elsewhere, Liz rests her cake on Cry's legs, telling him to let her go, but he has no plans to change his decision, despite her tantrum. Later on, the Akashic Tower members are ordered by Sophia to deploy phantoms one by one, but they can't seem to agree with her, as this way, things will only be easier for the hunters. In the end, they figure that Sophia might be lacking battle experience, and a mage named Flick ignored her orders and told his men to deploy all the phantoms at once. On the other hand, Citri and the others are busy interrogating the captured mages, and after guaranteeing their lives, she questions them about Magus's whereabouts. But when they refuse to snitch on their vintage-looking master, Citri is left with no choice but to use colored water on them. Seeing this, the official confronts Citri regarding the dangers of this potion, and Gark also advises her against torturing the captives. To put their concerns to rest, she drinks the colored water herself, shocking everyone present. A loud sound disrupts their meeting as another one of those phantoms makes an appearance. Firstly, Citri suggests figuring out the type of force field so they can find a way to break it. For that, she asks the shield bearers to stand in the phantom's way so she can check the direction of its force field. One of the hunters complies, and witnessing him blocking the phantom's attack makes Citri realize that its force field is rotating to the right and pushing back anything that makes contact with it. Still having no idea how to bring it down, she starts calculating different outcomes when, unexpectedly, another phantom appears. Seeing this, Citri takes a sigh of relief and calls the people from the Akashic Tower quite brain-dead. After that, she orders everyone to fall back, and as soon as those phantoms come across each other, they start battling each other instead of targeting hunters. Apparently, these phantoms normally target hunters to replenish their mana material, and now that there are other phantoms with way more mana material than hunters, this is the result. This prompts Magus to scold Flick and the others for ignoring orders. And Sophia, through the communication stone, also adds that she doesn't give orders on a whim. Nonetheless, Magus then questions Sophia regarding their next move, and she informs them that not only Citri but the level 7 hunter, Gark, has also joined the hunters. Furthermore, she believes that their captives might end up leaking information, and even if they don't, it won't be hard for Citri to figure out their whereabouts. If that happens, she wants the mages to overwhelm hunters with malice eaters and ultimately lead them into the base to use their trump card on them. While Magus likes the idea, he wishes someone would take command, and Sophia asks Flick to be the one to take the lead. On the other hand, Talia contemplates how Citri is a person of incredible talent and passion. To find the truth, Citri has carried out dangerous experiments, and no matter the conditions, she never gave up. While Citri's talent was remarkable, Talia always felt a slight bit of envy towards her. Eventually, her train of thought is interrupted by Sven, who figures that she must still be bummed after her slime repellent didn't work earlier. Furthermore, he blames Cry for always leaving out the important details and wonders why the captives have been staring at her all this time. But Talia is just as unaware as he is. Sometime later, Citri finds out the Akashic Tower base and says that she used the earth veins, mana material density, and terrain to figure it out. After that, she asks the captives if she guessed correctly, and judging by how much they start to panic, Citri realizes that she did. Sven then suggests raiding their base, and after hearing him, the captives panic even more and ask Sophia to stop them. Confused, the hunters begin to wonder who Sophia is, and Citri explains that she's a disciple of Noctis Cochlear and her lifelong nemesis. According to her, unless both Magus and Sophia are captured, their research won't come to an end. Lastly, Citri blames her incompetence for not being able to catch Sophia sooner and promises to throw her in prison as soon as possible. Elsewhere, Cry, along with Liz and Tino, has also arrived in the forest, but he's quite uneasy about this plan, considering his stickman-like limbs. Tino explains that the White Wolf Den is just up ahead, and seeing Liz hold his hand, she tries her luck as well, only to get yelled at by Liz, who says it's still too early for someone like her. Simultaneously, the others are heading towards the hideout, and along the way, Geen regrets not believing Cry earlier. Citri mentions that Cry was born to be a treasure hunter, and might even reach level 10 someday. Suddenly, she looks at the sky, and a lightning bolt strikes their group. This turns out to be Flick's doing, who used the advanced attack magic called Calamity Thunder. Afterward, he lands near the injured hunters and figures that Magus will be pleased if he wipes them out. But to his surprise, Citri walks up to him like nothing happened, saying that it's nothing but basic magic, and this level of magic isn't anything unusual for her. As Flick loses his mind, realizing this was his trump card, Citri uses her potion gun to heal Sven, who then cuts the mage down but fails to land a strike on Malice Eater. Luckily, Gark intervenes and takes it down. On the other hand, Magus curses Flick for once again ignoring Sophia's orders and taking only one Malice Eater from the many present at the base. Realizing that not only were the phantoms taken care of, but their base was discovered, and Calamity Thunder didn't work, makes the mages figure that everything was orchestrated by Cry. As a last resort, they ask Magus to book it, but he refuses, saying that they can still use their trump card, the Akashic. Meanwhile, Citri notices the phantoms outside the base and figures that they will need to clear them in order to reach the base. Gark supports the plan, suggesting that the three of them push forward and crush the phantoms with support from the hunters. With that, the hunters started fighting the Malice Eaters when, out of nowhere, a giant robot called Akashic appeared and overwhelmed Gark with brute strength. Sven also starts having difficulty targeting the Malice Eaters with his stormtrooper aim and gets injured in the process. Just then, Liz eliminates one of the Malice Hunters, making everyone realize that it's reinforcements from Cry, but little do they know that she went away from Cry on her own. Soon after, Tino notices movement of the escaped captives nearby and wonders if she should catch them, but Cry disagrees, suggesting they let them go, as they could be animals living in the forest. At the same time, Akashic continues tanking all the attacks made by hunters, and eventually, Liz tries testing her luck, but fails to bring it down in one move. Nonetheless, she continues striking it, and with Gark's help, they somehow bring Akashic to its knees, but it quickly regains its footing, and after pushing Gark away, it dodges Gark's attack by jumping in the air. Using this chance, Liz tries to land a strike, but shockingly, Akashic releases its shield and injures Liz's hourglass figure. Having no other choice, she is forced to run away from long-range attacks and deal minimal damage whenever she gets the chance. Before long, Cry shows up at the battle, and after noticing him, Akashic turns his attention towards Cry and flies towards him. But after getting close enough, Akashic stops and gets thrown into the mountain, where it ultimately stops working. Witnessing this, Liz gets surprised by his move and yells at Tino to get away from Cry, who remains confused as to what just happened. The next morning, Gark asks Sven about the move Cry made, to which Sven replies by saying that, according to Cry, that thing blew away on its own, which Gark obviously finds hard to believe. Nonetheless, Gark mentions that they managed to confiscate Magus's equipment, and the rest can be left to the investigation bureau. Meanwhile, Citri thanks Cry for the reinforcement, and when he asks if she needs help dealing with her nemesis, Citri disagrees as she wishes to settle it herself. Later that day, Cry is yelled at by Gark for pretending not to know anything while being the mastermind, not knowing that he really is a clueless liability. Cry then asks them to question Citri instead, and when the official hesitates, Eva asks if he feels uneasy investigating her after the incident 3 years ago. That time, Citri was falsely accused of being a part of a plan that resulted in many criminals escaping. Elsewhere, Magus is told by the mages that Sophia had infiltrated the hunters, and even if they had noticed her, no one made any moves. This reminds Magus that not only did Cry figure out the reality behind the ice cream shop, but also allowed the captives to escape. Since he can't understand Cry's intentions, he believes it'd be foolish to fight him and decides to escape to another city. Following that, Talia is brought to Magus, who calls her Sophia, telling her to drop the act. Confused, Talia tries explaining that she's not the Sophia they speak of, and when one of the Malice Eaters turns hostile towards her, they realize that she's not Sophia after all. Simultaneously, the real Sophia appears and apologizes for her late return. When Magus questions her about Talia, Sophia says that it's not Talia who looks like her, but she's the one who looks like Talia. Furthermore, she tells them about the minor differences between them, such as her honkers being slightly bigger than Talia's. With that being said, Sophia removes her wig, revealing her true self, which turns out to be Citri. Frustrated, Magus asks if she disguised herself as Sophia, and gets informed that ever since they first met, Sophia had always been Citri. The mages confront her for betraying them, and Citri mentions that she has always respected Magus and his insatiable curiosity. Magus had everything from expensive equipment to rare materials that helped her make things like Akashic, which would have taken a lot of time if she were alone. Lastly, she says that Cry let everything go unnoticed because of her warnings, and even though she didn't leak anything, Citri believes that Cry saw through it all. Now, all the research results will be confiscated, and the mages will be treated as criminals, but rest assured, as Citri will be taking on the research from now onwards. Enraged, Magus uses his powers and envelops Citri in flames, only for her to come out unscathed. Flabbergasted to witness this, Magus is explained by Citri that the reason she remained unharmed is thanks to the slime, her latest project that absorbs mana material from the surroundings and uses it to grow. Hearing this, Magus warns Citri that the slime can consume everything in the world, and gets told by Citri that this is why she wishes to use him as a test subject. Just then, the mages drop a smoke bomb, asking Magus to escape. But just as he is about to leave the room, Magus bumps into someone and falls down the stairs. It turns out to be an ultra-buff dude, and Citri comes to explain that she wanted to make something powerful, and the prison from 3 years ago was perfect for gathering materials. Despite letting many prisoners escape, she managed to create a single body with the gathered material. A few days later, Cry finds out that all those mages lost their memories and many things, including a golem, were confiscated. Hearing this, Citri asks for the confiscated research materials to be given to her, including the Akashic and Malice Eater, and Cry agrees to negotiate for it. Sometime later, a meeting is held to wrap up the White Wolf Den incident, where Cry requests the approval to receive the golem and that thing that sounded like water. This makes Gark question if he's talking about the Malice Eater, and when asked what he needs it for, Cry, thinking that it's liquid, says that he wants to drink it. His statement catches everyone present by surprise, making Cry realize that he messed up. After the meeting, Cry apologizes to Citri for not getting the golem, causing her to laugh and say that the drink is more than enough. After that, Gark calls Cry to have a talk and informs him about the level 7 hunter called Arnold visiting the town. Seeing him confused, Gark explains that he is a famous hunter who has even slayed dragons, to which Cry replies by saying that he has slain a couple of kitties as well. Hearing this, Gark cracks up, and after advising him not to cause trouble, he playfully slaps Cry on the back, causing him to lose one of his artifacts' extra lives. After that, Cry notices a posting about an auction, and remembers all the rare artifacts that are sold there. Unfortunately, he is currently short on money, and hasn't even returned what he borrowed from Citri. Before long, he runs into Chloe, Gark's niece, who informs Cry that she mostly sits on the reception desk, and their conversation gets interrupted when Citri returns, and the two of them leave. The two of them then walk past Arnold's party, unaware of who he is, and Arnold, who arrives in the building, talks to Chloe at the reception. She mistakes him for a newbie hunter. This enrages Arnold's subordinates, who can't believe a level 7 hunter was treated this way. They end up deciding to prove themselves to the hunters of this town using their skills, so they never underestimate the Dragon Slayer, Arnold, ever again. Elsewhere, Citri introduces the baby Malice Eater to Cry and mentions that it's taught not to harm her or Cry. The Malice Eater then instantly jumps onto Cry, and with each tail wiggle, Cry starts losing his extra lives until Citri ultimately takes it away from him. Judging by how quickly he's losing lives, Cry figures that he needs to get his artifacts charged and asks when Lucia will be returning home. Citri informs him that it might take a while for her to return since they are fighting a swordsman phantom in the boss room, and Luke doesn't want to return until he defeats it one-on-one. Citri then gives him a new artifact called Realize Outer, which allows the user to store one magic power inside, similar to the necklace Lucia gave him. Later on, Citri gives Cry a good massage with a promised happy ending, and he lets her know that his relics need to be charged as soon as possible. To solve this problem, she comes up with an idea and tells all the hunters that they can now take special training, which can make them a mage on the same level as the Grievers member, Lucia. Everyone gets surprised hearing this and starts to discuss this matter when, unexpectedly, the two members of Starlight, Lapis and Chris, show up. Chris starts by insulting Cry for looking like a dweeb, but gets told by Lapis to act with respect, as he's the clan master, and Chris finds it absurd that he is the person Lucia treats like her elder brother. Apparently, Starlight is a race composed of noble spirits who have exceptional magic skills. However, they tend to look down on anyone other than outstanding mages, and Lucia is one of those exceptions, which is why they can't believe such a training to reach her level exists. Citri explains that Lucia is an outstanding mage, particularly because she went through this training, and hearing this, one of Sven's coordinates decides to give it a try. For the training process, Mariette is told to charge one of Cry's artifacts, and after giving it her all, she eventually manages to charge it. Citri then gives her the next artifact, and while she's on her fourth one, Citri states that the growth of mana in a person stops after their teenage years, which means most of the hunters present are past their growth. Eventually, Marietta gives in and loses consciousness, which is a phenomenon Citri describes as mana exhaustion. She believes that there's a chance to increase one's mana limit during recovery from mana exhaustion. To make this work, she gives Marietta a few drops of the potion, which, according to her, increases her mana quantity. Following that, Citri remembers that Starlight members want to scout Lucia, yet they remain cocky just because they are from a race overflowing with magic. Feeling insulted, Chris decides to prove herself by taking part in the training, and especially for her, Citri brings a bag full of relics. Now with everyone motivated to work, Citri reassures Cry that all his relics will be fully charged. The next day, Cry and Citri pay a visit to Liz, but after hearing that she's busy showering, Citri begins getting close and personal with Tino. Eventually, Liz walks out of the shower with those buns exposed, and after being forced to wear a towel, she gets informed by Cry that he wishes to celebrate her and Citri's safe return. For that, the four of them visit a nearby tavern where Citri and Liz end up competing in a drinking challenge. However, Citri starts cheating by mixing a special potion in Liz's drinks, and Cry, who notices this, forces Citri to take the tampered drink instead. Having no other choice, she forcibly drinks it and gets totally wasted. In this state, she starts confronting Cry for seeing her as nothing but a walking wallet, and asks him to pay back using his body. Luckily, Liz puts a stop to her, and their fun gets interrupted by Ronald and his gang, who start pressing one of the hunters present at the tavern. Liz finds them interesting and walks up to Arnold, suggesting they play the drinking game, but when Arnold refuses, she spills the drink on his head and smacks him with a glass. Furthermore, she beats all his friends and pins Arnold's head down with her feet, asking if he's really level 7. The following day, Eva discusses the incident at the tavern with Cry, saying that causing them trouble so suddenly is a bit problematic. Since Arnold has a track record of slaying thunder dragons, Eva wishes to settle this peacefully and plans on asking Gark to mediate. Cry agrees with her, and talking about the thunder dragons reminds him of how delicious they taste when grilled. Confused, Eva mentions that the dragon's body is made of expensive materials and can't be used as food, but according to Cry, Citri has already cooked something similar. On the other hand, Arnold's party presses Chloe to reveal the name of the girl who completely folded them. Just then, Gark appears and lets him know that her name is Liz Smart. Furthermore, he jokes about Liz's guardian forgetting to stop her, and lets them know that he's called Thousand Tricks, a level 8 hunter. They all lose their minds hearing about his level, and Gark reassures them that Cry won't be laying hands on them if they promise to behave from now on. Before leaving, Gark mentions that Cry has a request for them, and says that he wants Arnold to fetch him a thunder dragon so he can grill it. Frustrated, they ask the townsfolk about Cry and report back to Arnold that they only heard vague stories about him. According to them, Cry never even takes part in missions and leaves them to his friends. Hearing this, Arnold figures that Cry might not have met someone with abilities matching his level yet. Furthermore, he believes that Cry's probably a military strategist type who has not reached level 8 through sheer strength, but thanks to his friends. While he's not weak, Arnold is confident that he is no match for him, who has reached level 7 through his own powers. With that being said, he decides to defeat the level 8 hunter and make everyone regret looking down on him. Elsewhere, Eva learns about Cry's 10-digit debt to Citri and informs him that it totals approximately 10 billion. This reminds Cry that Citri made 3 suggestions to make the repayment easier for him. The first one is to throw Citri in prison and make the debt default. The second one is to get married so they can consolidate their assets. And lastly, the third one is to become her groom. He jokes about how marrying her might be the only option and gets told by Eva that it's possible as long as he doesn't waste money, because the income from grievers is more than enough to repay her. She suggests diving into the treasure vaults solo for once to earn some cash, unaware that it's too much for a weakling like him. Once Eva leaves, he begins stressing about the debt and tries to clear his mind by getting some fresh air. Just then, Tino turns up, asking if he needs anything, as she's willing to do anything he wants. That sad excuse of a man ends up asking Tino for some money, and at first, she agrees to lend him a little bunch, only to give up completely after hearing about the 10-digit amount. Nonetheless, the two of them then decide to roam around the town, and along the way, Tino suggests going to treasure vaults and looking for relics, as there is an auction going on and they might sell for a high price. She believes that he could find some valuable relics, but if he really could, there'd be no reason to be indebted in the first place. Before long, they end up running into Arnold's party, and judging by their aggressive attitude, Cry admits that Liz was at fault the other day and apologizes on her behalf, saying that he doesn't want to ruin his date with Tino right now. However, Tino gets annoyed with his apology and tells Arnold that Cry is just worried that they might get beaten to a pulp. This only fuels Arnold's rage, and having no other choice, Cry decides to take the fight to a crowded street, hoping to get assistance from a strong hunter, but unfortunately, there is no one present. Arnold eventually speaks up and confronts Cry for reaching level 8 through luck and help from his friends. While Cry stays silent, Tino speaks up and says that she can't keep quiet when her master is insulted. Furthermore, she asks Cry to let her fight them, and to everyone's shock, he agrees and steps back. Without any further ado, Tino begins her battle with Arnold, while Cry tries his best to search for any strong hunters present nearby. Realizing that he's on his own, Cry starts cheering his one and only hope. However, Tino easily gets overwhelmed by the level 7 Arnold, who pins her to the ground. At this point, Cry is forced to use the locket given to him by Lucia. Turns out he had asked her to add a spell to the locket that only subdues high-level hunters without eliminating them or hurting anyone else. Using this specific spell, Cry manages to slam every one of them to the ground, including Arnold, and reveals that it's gravity magic. After that, he tells Arnold that if he still wishes to fight him, there have to be some conditions. Since he's the leader of the parties, Arnold needs to make his way up by defeating all their parties, including Obsidian Cross, Starlight, and Archgrave. If he can defeat those 3, only then will Cry take him up on his challenge. Following that, the two of them visit a restaurant where Tino apologizes for not meeting Cry's expectations and calls herself pathetic, someone who doesn't even deserve to eat the cake they ordered. Before Cry could say anything, Tino asked Cry for a chance to redeem herself and asked about a treasure vault with priceless treasure, so she could repay his 10-digit debt. Later that day, Cry meets up with Chloe, who wants to investigate the incident with Arnold. She starts by questioning the reason he was provoking Arnold by asking to be given a thunder dragon, to which Cry replies that he never asked for that in the first place. Additionally, he asks Chloe to tell Arnold that he'll make sure not to forget him now. After the investigation ends, he gets up to leave, but gets stopped by Chloe, who reminds Cry about the hunter's exam she failed 3 years ago, and wonders what she was lacking. Having no clue what to say, that loudmouth starts his mindless yap, telling Chloe that she should have noticed it by now. He believes that she could pass the exam now, but there's no need, as Chloe is already fulfilling her role as a receptionist of the Explorers Association. After dropping his wisdom, Cry leaves and later remembers that Chloe only failed because she was underage and could have passed if she were only a year older. Sometime later, Chloe tells Arnold that Cry canceled the request for the dragon meat and promised not to forget about them until the time comes. Lastly, Chloe hesitates to say one last thing that Cry said, and when they press her to say it, she ends up yelling and telling everyone that Arnold seems to like them melons big in size, catching everyone, including Arnold, by surprise. Following that, he mocks Cry for wanting to make them fight powerful parties from his clan, and before long, one of his subordinates returns. He mentions that Sven straight up refused to fight them, and invited him to a drink instead. Chris also declined the offer, and so did Lapis. Meanwhile, the Ark Brave party member, Isabel, called him an idiot for taking Cry seriously in the first place. Nevertheless, Laria improves Arnold's mood by reminding him of the relic they can sell in the upcoming auction. Elsewhere, Mathis examines a relic that Tino discovered in one of the treasure vaults and informs Cry that it's an item from a high-level magical civilization. But as for its effects, Mathis asks for some time to properly study it because he already has a lot of work thanks to the auction. Upon learning this, Cry requests Mathis let him see the relics for the auction. And while he does that, Mathis enjoys a conversation with Tino and advises her to rely on her friends, including the good-for-nothing Cry. Tino agrees and calls Cry a wonderful person who not only is pretty strict, but has a ton of debt as well. In the meantime, Cry comes across a relic that is a mask resembling one of his favorite relics that Liz broke. If it's the same relic, Cry can have the power to change his face and freely roam around the city without any guards or having to deal with Arnold. Ultimately, he asks Mathis to let him deal with the owner of this mask and asks for their contact information. Later, Tino wonders how Cry is going to buy it and informs him that Citri is already spending a ton on her research and might not have saved much. Kai realizes that if he asks Liz, she might start collecting money by force, and besides Citri, he doesn't have anyone to lend him money. Just then, they notice guards of a noble family standing outside their clan's building, and soon after, Ark comes out to see off a midget blondie named Eclair. After finishing her conversation with Ark, she questions what Cry is looking at. Ark then introduces Eclair as Earl's daughter, and tells Eclair that Cry is the clan master. Realizing that Cry is the so-called Thousand Tricks, Eclair mentions that her father often talks about him, but in reality, he looks surprisingly mid. She continues insulting Cry, and after getting tired, asks why he's not fighting back. Cry replies by saying that he always tries his best to be cautious with his behavior, which catches Eclair by surprise, and with that, she leaves. After that, Cry sits with Ark to have a conversation and asks if he can lend him some money. Ark straight up refuses, and no matter how much Cry tries to persuade him, Ark's decision remains the same. Ultimately, he ends up asking Citri to lend him some money, and shockingly, she agrees even when she had to sell some spare materials to gather the amount. She offers to help him negotiate with the relic owner, and all Cry hopes is for the seller to sell it for around 30 million. But to his shock, the relic seller turns out to be Arnold, and as soon as the talks begin, Luria mentions that the mask is a very rare item that they won't be selling for cheap and threatens to sell it at the auction if they try to lowball them. Citri replies by saying that the mask is a creepy-looking relic, which Cry doesn't really want in the first place, and she believes that the nobles won't go after something like that either. Arnold then speaks up, saying that they can't put a price on the relic as they don't know its powers yet. If they sell it for a low price, they'll just end up looking like fools, so it's better to just destroy it. He then asks if Cry knows its powers, but Cry refuses to reveal them and mentions that it's a dangerous relic that's illegal to use in the country. At first, Arnold thinks of Cry as a poor negotiator, but then a realization comes to him as he wonders if it's a trap. He starts to think that the mask might be dangerous, and that's why Cry tried retrieving it before the auction. However, after finding out that Arnold is the owner, Cry might have changed his approach and now wants him to suffer. Thinking that he figured it out, Arnold offers 10 million for the mask as he believes that falling into Cry's trap and holding onto the mask might be the dumbest move. As expected, Citri agrees to buy it at that price until they are interrupted by a ton of people who start bidding. Eventually, Eclair appears and offers to pay 100 million for the mask. Eva later informs Cry that rumors of him asking Ark for a loan spread across the town, which made everyone think that it was the strongest relic. Nonetheless, Eva advises him against taking any more loans when, unexpectedly, Citri appears with a buy full of money, equaling around 800 million that she saved for their wedding. With that being said, she suggests paying Eclair a visit and trying to persuade her. However, his showing up at her house impresses Eclair, and she says that his nerves rival Ark's. Cry lets her know that Ark's much better than him, as he only sees him as a friend. Thinking that he's making fun of Ark, Eclair gets enraged and accuses Cry of reaching level 8 using the power of relics. Instead, she decides to offer that mask to Ark, but Cry believes that Ark might not like it because one can't become strong with just a relic. Citri then intervenes, saying that she has 200 million, which is more than Eclair's 100 million offer. Having no other choice, Eclair is forced to ask her daddy for help, who gets informed that they can gather around 1 billion. Lastly, her dad orders Eclair to win the bidding war as there's no room for weakness in their family. The next day, Citri, along with Liz and Cry, is on their way to the auction with 950 million, and Cry has decided to give up if the selling cost exceeds their budget. After arriving at the auction venue, Cry runs into Tino and her party and asks why she didn't come with the three of them, only to be reminded by Tino that he never invited her. Nevertheless, Cry figures it's for the best if they don't go together since he stands out way too much due to the rumors. Furthermore, Cry asks Tino to auction on her behalf and tells her to raise the bid at his signal. Eclair also arrives and gives them the cold shoulder, which makes Citri realize that she must have acquired the funds. Before long, the auction begins, and Liz questions when the mask relic will be coming out. Cry mentions that it might take some time, thanks to the attention it's receiving, and regrets not being able to bid on any other relics because of his limited funds. However, a sword whose blade length can increase to 3 meters catches Cry's attention, and he starts having a hard time controlling himself. Then, a cloak that lets one breathe underwater starts testing Cry's discipline even further, which makes him question if that mask is really that important or if he should go for the quantity over quality approach. As the relics continue rolling in, Cry starts losing his mind until eventually he gives in and stands up to finally bid on a relic. But to their shock, the next relic for auction turns out to be the Akashic Golem that Citri failed to retrieve. Concerned, Cry asks if she's okay with it, to which she agrees, saying that if they go for it, his mask will be out of the question. However, after hearing that it's a memento from her comrades, something important to Citri, Cry changes his mind and starts bidding for the golem. Soon after, the bidding price reaches 300 million, and when Citri asks if he's okay with it, Cry agrees, knowing that it's her money to begin with. As the price continues to increase, Liz hopes that people give up before reaching 950 million. But unfortunately, one of them bids 990 million, leaving Cry no other choice but to use his trump card and purchase the golem at 1.6 billion. Concerned, Liz mentions that it's over their budget and they could get in trouble for not paying the price, but to her shock, Cry hands a blank check to Citri, asking her to pay it up. It turns out to be Cry's little sister's saving, but at this point, he can't take back what happened. Once the golem is sold, the announcer reveals the buyer's name, and it turns out to be none other than Greg. After the auction, Tino apologizes to Cry, saying that she doesn't know much about auctions and had to rely on Greg to do the bidding. Gilbert then asks Cry about the relic he wanted to buy, to which Cry replies by saying that it's fine, as he already achieved his goal. Later that day, Cry asks Ark to visit Eclair right away and informs him that the relic is quite dangerous. Upon hearing this, Ark questions if he needs any weapons, and Cry disagrees, saying that it's better if he goes without one. With that being said, Cry is sure that Ark will receive that mask as a present from Eclair, and then he can buy it from him at a friendly price. Meanwhile, Eclair sits in her room, remembering that her father said Cry let him win the auction, as according to his intelligence, Cry had already left the venue before the bidding started. Frustrated, Eclair wonders what is so special about the relic when, unexpectedly, the mask speaks, asking if she wants power. Furthermore, it starts flying, and says that it gives hope to the frail. Sometime later, Ark also arrives at her house and gets informed by her father that Eclair has locked herself in her room, and he believes she might show her face to him. Just then, they hear a loud bang, and when his party goes to investigate the sound, they witness a guard crashing into a vase, followed by the appearance of Eclair, who has that mask attached to her face. She starts going crazy and wants to eliminate those who make fun of her. Seeing this, Ark walks up to her and asks what happened, and gets told by Eclair that she got the mask for him. He shows his gratitude and asks Eclair to hand over the mask to him. But just as she's about to comply, Eclair notices the sword by Ark's side and asks if he really needs it. This reminds Ark of Cry's warning not to bring a weapon, and when Eclair loses control over herself again, he steps back and orders his party to tear off her mask. Elsewhere, Arnold's comrades talk about selling the mask for 200 million and are excited as it's sold for much more than they anticipated. But their smile fades when they witness Liz and Citri waiting for them. Citri mentions that the profit from that relic is thanks to Cry's plan, and they are here to take their share. When they try to argue, Citri shows them an antidote and lets them know of the suspicious potion she had mixed in their drinks earlier. In the meantime, Cry apologizes to Ark for making him go through the trouble and gets scolded by Ark for always giving vague information. Nevertheless, he hands over the mask to Cry, and watching it speak shocks him even more. Without any hesitation, Cry puts the mask on. But after realizing that Cry's stats are worse than a dead raccoon's, even the mask is forced to give up on Cry. However, even though it's not a reverse face, it's a relic that talks, and Cry decides to keep it. How long do you think Cry can keep up this fake identity? Comment Hunter if you watch till the end. As usual, thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.